Hey guys, Erin here with Southern Girl Exotics. Welcome back to my channel. So we're going to be doing a video this week that is going to upgrade my little knobtail Nipples here. Nipples is such a good baby. I've had him for many years. He was a couple years old when I got him, so he's probably about 10 years now. Amazing pet. Knobtails are incredible, especially the wheeler eye species. These guys are just known to be really docile. They don't bark or hiss typically like some of the other subspecies, and so he deserves an upgrade. Now, Nipples has had shed issues on his face. I have been dealing with it for years. Every time he sheds, I usually have to do a little maintenance. So I've tried some suggestions over the years. Recently, the last year, he got downgraded into a 10-gallon, and we tried both a humid hide in it as well as keeping part of the tank humid and the other part dry. It doesn't seem to help. No matter what I do, I'm going to have to soak him every shed and get the shed off. So since I have to do that anyways, I decided we might as well upgrade him back into a bigger tank so he's got more room, even though for a little guy like this it's going to be a pretty massive area, but that's okay. The way that this tank is laid out, which I will show you, it doesn't take up a ton of length, which is great, so it's more depth. And that's perfect for a terrestrial gecko. Terrestrial geckos don't need a lot of height, and as long as they have floor space, they're getting the enrichment and the space that they need. Nonetheless, I want to do a lot more of building videos with you guys this year. Several of my animals we are going to be upgrading. We're going to be doing faux bioactives as well as real bioactives, and we're going to be building my box turtles a pen outside this year. So I am super excited to take you guys along for that, but this is going to be the first one this year. I'm really proud of how this thing turned out. I'm not going to show it to you right now in the intro. You're going to have to follow along and see how it turned out, but from start to finish, I'm really happy, and I think Nipples is going to be super stoked tonight once the lights go out and he gets to really explore all the new smells, all the new textures, all the new space. It's going to be pretty exciting for this guy. So if you like the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you are new here, please subscribe, and I will see you guys at the end of the video. Alright, so we're going to see how well I can convert this really dirty, out in the rain for 2 years tank into something a little more cozy for my knobtail and a little bit bigger. This is going to be an ordeal, just getting this thing at least a little bit visually nice because it is gross with algae and dirt. It has been literally in the yard in the rain with mud and whatnot for 2 years. So we'll see how this works out. So it is in pretty bad shape, but I think I can clean it. I just sprayed it down. Now we'll get to scrubbing. It doesn't look like it has any cracks or anything in it, so that's good, but we're gonna build a little background anyways in it. Alright guys, so I'm just going to walk you through what I did here. This is the first time I've ever tried this spray wash on a tank. I love this for dishes. If you have teenagers, you know they cook everything on high and tear up your nonstick pans. And so it has been a lifesaver in that aspect. So I thought I would try it on this tank, and it worked beautifully. Typically, I have tried vinegar washes, I have tried Lime Away. There's tons of different sprays that I've used in the past. This, being a harmless, non-toxic dish soap, worked wonders. I did still have to scrub this down twice. However, it was just kind of getting the last little bit of remnants, considering this tank has been in the yard with literally dirt and leaves that have like disintegrated into the glass. I think it did an amazing job and made it super easy to get clean. You definitely want to make sure that you're not using a very coarse sponge when you are scrubbing your glass. It will scratch the glass. The one I used is one that has been in our kitchen for dishes for the last few months, so it was softened on both sides. But I think I would say that looks pretty damn good. Alright, the good thing about having a shed full of unused reptile shit is that it typically comes in handy. I have hides, I have styrofoam, I have just about everything I need to continue to make more bioactive enclosures, and it always comes in handy, even though I'm always complaining about the extra stuff I have that I don't need. So next up, we're going to do the spray foam background. I had this on hand. I always have a couple of these on hand. However, this is the natural color. It's like a yellowy color. And especially if people are going to be able to look at the back of the enclosure behind the backboard, black is better. So I ran to Ace real quick. I got a couple cans of the black. You guys can use the Pawn and Stone if you want to, especially if you're going to make like a semi-aquatic type setup where the foam is going to be in water. One, it holds better so it won't lift like this will if this is submerged in water for long periods of time. But there's also steps that have been taken with the Pawn and Stone to make it not toxic if your animal is swimming in the water with that foam. Now, this foam works just fine. It's going to save you about $2 a can if you're not going to have it submerged in water. And this is a desert dwelling species, so it does not need to be in water. Nonetheless, this is what we're using. Black always looks better in my opinion. All right, moving into the foam. I love doing the foam part. I don't know why this is so relaxing to me. However, it can be incredibly messy. I highly recommend that you use gloves if you are going to be using spray foam. It will absolutely ruin your hands and your nails. Nonetheless, it is still my favorite part. Now, you need to make sure that you have a clear idea of how you want your background to look before you even get started with this step. Have all your styrofoam or cork bark or pots, whatever you're wanting to put in the background, already laid out. I didn't go all the way to the top here. I'll explain that later in the video, but I did want to add some ledges. Unfortunately, if your gravity is not in your favor, a lot of the foam will slip right off. So sometimes you're going to have to do your background and especially ledges or walkways in 2 or 3 separate parts, letting it dry in between. Of course, there's other tricks to the trade if you want to add toothpicks or things like that to hold it up. But when gravity's not in your favor, you will end up with a bunch of extra foam that has fallen off and just made a mess. All right, moving into my least favorite part of background building, and that is the cutting and shaping of the rocks. You need to concentrate on trying to get all of the shiny part of the foam cut so that you have that open, porous part of the foam exposed. It can be a pain in the butt trying to angle your arms in the tank, and you're really playing a game of Twister sometimes to get the right angles. It sucks. So it is my least favorite. Then you're going to move into some type of cover for the foam. You can actually leave the foam the way it is if you want. I like to use shower grout. Some people use Drylock. Some people use cement. Some people use silicone with substrate attached to it. Whatever, but this is probably my favorite. I love this color. Another good thing about using shower grout is that they've got so many fun colors, but this is what the majority of my tanks, the color that I use, this haystack color. I also bought the premix this time. Typically, I buy the powder. It's not really, I don't really see the difference in paying the extra for premixed, but it's very easy to spread. All you need is a spoon, or you can use a butter knife, and then you're just going to take your time spreading it over all of your background. Again, it may not stick as well to the foam pieces if they are still shiny and they haven't been cut, but you could always do a second coat in that area if you wanted to. Guys, excuse my hair and my makeup and my house outfit. It's been a very, very long night for me. I was up at the ER with my kitter cats till about 6:30 a.m. and so I've only had a couple hours of sleep today. Nonetheless, I want to get this built and finished so that I can keep being consistent and get you guys a video out this week. So we're going to move on now. The grout, shower grout, has dried. I could do a second coat if I wanted to. You can see some of the black a little bit showing through the shower grout, but I'm okay with that. If you aren't, you can always do a second coat. Now we're gonna clean up all this extra grout that I've cut back or where the foam has been cut back. Clean that up, and then we will start setting up the enclosure and get our little guy in it. Now, this would be a lot easier if you had an actual scraper. I don't on hand, so I'm going to be using my little razor blade like this, and I am far too clumsy to take the blade out and do it just with my fingers. I will end up cutting my finger off. I already know that. So if you're going to do it stupidly like I'm going to do it, where you're going to bend the blade to scrape it, I suggest you keep your head behind the glass. There's been many of times that these things have snapped when I'm cutting the foam or when I'm scraping it, and by the grace of God I was behind this glass, so it hit the glass and didn't take out my eyeball. Alright, so this is another time that just keeping random reptile crap is going to come in handy. Anytime you want to do an enclosure build, having just junk on hand saves you a ton of money and a ton of time of having to run out and get other things. So I always steal, not really steal, they're free, the little tile samples at Lowe's or Home Depot. So I've got so many of these. I'm going to use this for a little hot spot for him. It's really hard to use heating pads when you have substrate. So I'm going to do the majority of it sand, because this absolutely is one of those species that you need to offer sand to. If you want to mix it with dirt, you absolutely can. I just use play sand that's been cleaned, washed, rinsed, and that works for me and has worked for him for the last 5 years that I've had him. But sand is definitely the way to go, but if you want to mix it up, you're welcome to do that. Anyways, when you have a heating pad, typically it's really hard to get the surface area warm enough to what you want it to get to for your animal to absorb the heat. So I like to use either these, or sometimes I just use a plain paper towel and put a hide over that spot. That way I know that whatever I set the thermostat to, that right there where he's laying is that temperature. So again, you can do it however you want. You always could raise the heat on your thermostat so that it's penetrating through the sand, but because it's got to penetrate through layers of sand or dirt, whatever you're using, substrate, that can be finicky and it's going to change, versus if he's directly against the heating pad with just a thin barrier laying on top of it, he can easily get that temperature.
So if you haven't noticed yet, this is going to be more of a faux bioactive. So this is not going to have real plants in it. A lot of desert dwelling species, or species that are going to live on sand or require higher heat, less humidity, don't have a ton of plants out there you can use anyways. And then of course it's really hard to find plants that are going to survive in sand, even if you do a sand dirt mix. Nonetheless, I love faux bioactives. I know it is always better if you can do a real bioactive. Unfortunately, I don't have enough plugs to run all of my enclosures as real bioactives, and even having the faux flowers, plants, etc. in there still gives the animal all the comfort and hiding and realistic environment, almost as good as having a real bioactive.
Now, if I'm switching a reptile into another enclosure and they've already been established here, upgrading, whatever, I like to use things from their other enclosure to give some familiar smells so that it's not completely overwhelming. We want the upgrade to be enriching, but we don't want it to be completely different if we can help it. So this little hide right here came from his original enclosure, and I'm going to take a couple of these little plants that he had in there. They're about done for, but nonetheless we'll keep them in for a while so that again it has some familiar smells and it's not as overwhelming. Now, typically people will go all the way up to the top on the background. Some of y'all may have noticed that I did not. Partly is because I do not have a lid for this tank. Now, this is not an animal that can scale glass, so I'm perfectly fine with leaving the top off of it. Well, I have to. I don't have a top for it. And because it has this irregular shape, it's going to be next to impossible for me to find a replacement top, most likely, unless it's going to be like one of those solid plexiglass or glass ones like it came with, and then I'm going to have a problem with ventilation. So I decided not to go all the way to the top. That is a much bigger gap than the animal is long, so he will not be able to reach up there and climb out, but most people do go all the way to the top. Nonetheless, I'm happy with this. I think this turned out really, really nice for a tank that was lying in my yard for 2 years collecting mildew and weeds and everything else. All right, so let's get our little buddy in his new home and see how he likes it.
I just love Nipples so much. I am so excited to be doing this for him. I really think he's going to love this tank, and I am stoked to come in here tonight and once the lights go out and watch him just explore his new digs. So this is a lot of floor space for him, and he's such a good boy, the goodest boy. So he definitely deserves this.
Alright guys, well I hope you enjoyed the video. I certainly enjoyed making it. I think this tank did a 180-degree turnaround from the algae, dirty, nasty tank that it was. I have tanks everywhere. Yes, I had plenty of clean ones, but I kind of just wanted to give this little one a polish up. I like the design of it with the boat out front. So I think he's going to like it. He has had a lot of issues with shedding, especially on the head. I don't know if you noticed it just a minute ago in the clip. He still has some on his eyes. I've been working on it today, trying to get it off of him. They're such a delicate species that I hate having to press down and try to lift up shed and get it off of him. So I really love Nipples. I hope he lives another 10 years, and I hope that he enjoys his new enclosure, because it's definitely pretty to look at, and I think he'll enjoy being able to move around again and get a little enrichment and experience all the new smells for the next few months. Comment down below, let me know what you think. Do you guys enjoy videos like this? I may do a couple more that do different styles of backgrounds. There are several different ways that you can do backgrounds, bioactives, faux bioactives, any of this stuff. There's so many different ways, and I would love to try some other ideas when it comes to how to do this. I typically stick with the spray foam just because it's sealed and attached to the back, and I like to be able to mold it the way I want. I like the way it gives a very voluptuous, rocky look, but there are several other ways. So I may in the future do some other videos trying out some other people's ideas. So comment down below and let me know how you make backgrounds. Is this something that you would do? Is there an easier way to do it or a more functional way to do it? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Nonetheless, if you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you are new here, please subscribe. And I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week.